the dystopian future is coming depending on your perspective. And there are people that don't want to maybe be a part of it because the system that is being built, the main system that is being built, is controlled by the current same people that control society today. They're building it in order to control you, to limit your movement, limit your communication, limit your commerce, and put you in a category in which they can decide for you how you live your life.
Yes.
This, at this point, anyone watching, listening, agrees to be true.
Yes.
So there's two options. You can either, three options. One is that you comply. The second is that you actively try to break down what they're building. Or the third is you create an alternative reality.
Extract yourself, yes.
And you move to another one.
Yeah.
And I've always been on the side of you can't really break down the broken system because it's too big. They have too much money, too much power, too much influence, too many weapons. Like, it's not actually that easy to do.
No, not at all.
The best way to combat that, and I'm not the guy to comply, the best way to combat that is to create an alternative, hoping that your alternative is so much better than the original that people just want to join your alternative. And by comparison, it makes the original seem that much more corrupt, which makes sense. But the thought here, or the question is that alternative, is that digital or is that physical? Do you need to create a digital alternative, considering that as of now already, even if technology did not improve, our lives are pretty much digital?
Yes.
90% of all of our interactions with the world are online.
Yes.
Do you want to create a digital alternative reality? Or do you actually need to create a physical alternative world?
The answer that's coming up and rising up in my gut is clearly analog.
Just a quick break before this video continues. If you haven't signed up for Soju yet, go check it out, soj.oo. It's a social discussion platform that we've created. That's where the community is hanging out. Definitely worth checking out, soj.oo. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now.
Clearly analog, because we have so many examples of digital communities that have arisen. Digital communities with the same moniker, the same vision, and the same mission on their About page, and it goes like this. We are creating a digital community that is extracting ourselves from the political BS, da-da-da-da-da-da. We are going to be free thinkers, and we're going to... You're basically a whole bunch of nothing at the end of the day. Like, you've created a service, a product, where people can sometimes go to remove themselves from their other digital world. When they exit your digital community of analog, deeper connections, whatever that means, they're going to spend 99% of the time in the rest of the digital world that they're used to. And so creating a digital world is nothing but a distraction, number one, or number two, it is a way to self-placate the I'm doing good and I'm removing myself when you're really doing nothing. So I think the short answer is if you want to truly be free, then you're going to have to do the hard labor of physically doing something and going analog, removing yourself. We hear stories of people, in communities creating compounds together, small communities together. The one that I always go to is Orania. You've heard of that? So you can look it up, Will. I'm not going to get everything correct here. But Orania is a nation state in South Africa. It was created in 1991 by Afrikaners, farmers that were in South Africa. What they decided is that during those times, post-apartheid, is that all of the local communities around there did not like them because they're Afrikaners, which means they're white Anglo-Saxons in South Africa. And so instead of getting killed by the locals who said, "Oh, you're racist. Oh, you're sucking our land dry. Oh, you're taking advantage of us. Oh, we're going to attack you. We're going to make your lives hard." These guys, these Afrikaners, these white Anglo-Saxons in 1991 said, "You know what? Fine. You don't like us? We're going to leave." And so a bunch of white Afrikaners left and created this nation state called Orania. Turns out that when these white Anglo-Saxons moved away and created their own nation state of Orania in 1991 in South Africa, they flourished. And now what's happening is the surrounding periphery saying, "You guys are flourishing without us. we need you guys to stop flourishing. We need you to come back and help us. It's like, you can't win. They're either going to kill you because they think that you're taking advantage of them. When you leave and say, no, sir, I'm done, they're going to be mad at you anyway because your industriousness and your ability to create commerce and create a lifestyle that's worth living, they can't do it, so they're just going to try to destroy those that are trying to do it. So look up Orania. Is everything basically that I said true?
He's nodding yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there is precedence of entire people groups, small, leaving the location that they are and saying, you guys hate us? Fine. We're going to roll our own. And so if you look up the history of Orania, 1991, Afrikaners, you will see that they have thrived by removing themselves and deciding that segregation maybe was a good thing.
Because this concept of a network state or a nation state, these are not brand new concepts. These are people have constantly attempted and tried. Ghislaine Maxwell herself tried to attempt it. She tried to make the ocean her sovereignty.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And people actually signed up for their passports and all of this. So people have been attempting it. It's not the easiest thing to do.
No.
Right? In order to actually be a recognized nation state or a network state, you have to, the hardest part is getting treaties.
Yes.
You have to have other countries recognize you.
Yep.
Otherwise, you don't actually have your sovereignty.
Well, because you can't trade.
Yeah, you need to figure out how to do the sovereignty part, right? Otherwise, they can always just come and take you.
It's all about commerce. You got to be able to have commerce. If you don't have commerce, you're not going to survive.
And it's also very difficult to do within the United States.
Oh, for sure.
Because the United States does not like sovereign nations popping up within its borders, even if it's 10 people.
Yeah. Didn't we have one pop up in Portland?
Oh, the autonomous zone?
Yeah. What was the autonomous zone in Portland, Oregon called?
Was it Seattle?
Or was it Seattle? It was some weird ass name.
It was during COVID.
Yeah, it was during
the BLM part.
What was that thing called?
I thought it was called autonomous zone.
It was an autonomous zone, but it had a name, and the name was so bobo. It was so like
Chaz.
Chaz.
Yeah.
Chaz was created during BLM.
That's really retarded.
And they didn't survive.
They couldn't, because they realized that when you
they were anarchy.
They were anarchy, but when what they realized is the base of humanity, which is simply this: if you go off on your own, you actually have to work. That's what they didn't want to do. Is they created this Chaz zone, and they realized that if they wanted for this Chaz autonomous zone to actually make it, they actually had to work. They had to build commerce. They had to build trade. They had to build food and farms. And Lord knows, you would not want a liberal cuck to ever have to work for their meal or work for what they need to do, right? And so complete failure. If I remember correctly, there's a dead body. Someone died in Chaz, and they wouldn't even let the local police take the body out because they were so anarchist, and they'd rather let that body just die and disintegrate on the road there. And so these separate countries or extracting yourself, bad idea in America. In other countries, apparently, for example, in South Africa, Orania, apparently it's possible.
There was a guy in Soji that wrote this post about sovereignty and about trying to escape the system, etc. And he had this line at the end, which it was I loved. It said, it has come to this generation, we have to be the ones that push back. And this has to be for a greater cause than just shekels. We have to be the men who plant trees of which we will never enjoy the shade.
Yeah, that's that quote. When's the best time to plant a tree? Now, even if you don't benefit from it. And I like that idea, because it for me, as an entrepreneur and venture capitalist, for me the solution to that question is always start now. Start now. Start now. Don't wait. I had a conversation, if I may. I had a conversation with my daughter, who's a teenager. And she was telling me about this streamer that she likes to watch. And she was telling me, man, I watched this person for 3 or 4 years, and I watched them grow. Man, I remember, Appa, when you had me start streaming my Minecraft 5 years ago. And I was like, why did you quit? you were good at it. You were having fun, right? But you're giving me this story of this one streamer that you've been watching. That could have been you. Start now. And the goal is not to start now and make sure that you're successful in that endeavor. You know as well as I do as a business builder, Matt, that your original substantiation of that idea is going to be changed 9,000 times before you get to the final result. And so the message to my daughter was start now. Do something now. The goal is not to make that thing happen. The goal is to keep executing, keep trying, keep learning. You will find that which you enjoy through that. So that quote, build the tree now, is that the call for our generation today? Is that we need to do the hard work to build these trees now for our younger generation to appreciate the shade? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think a lot about what's life going to be like in 20 years, obviously, because my daughter is 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
In 20 years, this is exactly what I have to prepare her for.
And by the way, it'll come like this.
Yeah. And for you, it's 10 years.
Less. I got teenagers now.
But in 20 years, life will be completely different. We need to prep our future generation on how to handle that, because what we teach them now, actually, you have to think ahead to make sure that they're prepared for that moment. Because if anyone that teaches them exactly what they need to know right now, what they're learning is useless in 20 years.
It's going to be outdated.
Completely outdated.
If I can give you an example, I learned in college in the late 90s, early 2000s, these coding languages in college through courses. None of that shit's used today. Like they taught, I was in these classes. None of that coding language have any value today. We were learning outdated material as it was becoming outdated.
Yeah.
So no doubt, absolutely, the stuff that people are learning today, in 20 years, it's going to have almost
And the education system is so slow. So by the time they keep up, they catch up, the few people that understood it early will be way ahead of everyone else. We're going to create this huge dichotomy and separation of people that understand it and don't understand it. And it's not going to be your fault or your kid's fault. It's just what's around them.
So can I create an indictment on our older generation, the boomers? What you're asking for is exactly what the boomers haven't done.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm going to sound really rude to maybe our boomer, colleagues and followers and subscribers here, but I'm just going to speak plainly here. It is abundantly clear to me that the boomers have completely been selfish, and you can't blame them for that.
You can't.
They have limited, foresight about what's coming up. You lived in a grand golden age where you could literally pay your house off in 5 years on your salary in the 80s.
I mean, there was also no precedent or history on how fast this thing called technology can move.
Fair enough.
So, like, they don't know what they don't know.
Fair enough. They don't know what they don't know. However, they do know today, as 70 and 80-year-olds, they do know today where the world is headed. And so, if I can create a massive dig on the boomer generation today should be making policies that are valuable for the younger generation instead of continuing to persevere on policies that only help them. You're going to be dead in 20 years. It's not a bad thing. It's just a reality. You're going to be dead in 20 years. So the policies you should be making today should probably help the younger generation who literally cannot survive on a full-time job. They have to have roommates. They cannot have the entertainment they wanted. They will never be able to own a house ever based on their salary and inflation. And in most cases, they will never get under the crippling debt of their university debt plus retail debt. Like the boomer generation has failed the younger generation in terms of policies that are forward-thinking and progressive to help them, because the boomers, they're not going to be around for another 20, 15 years.
Well, and that's why it's important that we have this conversation, because if you're a grandparent, if you're a parent, and you're thinking, I'm just going to make sure my kid is in a good school, and they're just going to follow along with what the system does, and maybe they're going to get in a good college, and I hope they become a doctor or a lawyer. If that's your mentality at this point in life, like, you are doing your kids a disservice.
Yeah, you've lost the narrative.
Because that's what they're going to try to do to your kids. That's how they're going to trap your kids, and they will live purely in that system of the 80% that we said, that rely on the system of control, that rely on these social credit scores, that rely on these manufactured foods. This is what you're preparing them for. Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.